Who hasn't asked a question? Let's go back here.
Do you think that because most of the victims were from South Phoenix into Central Phoenix and mostly minority, that might have lowered the priority concern of the lab?
Definitely.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Man, I sure hope that's not the case. But I think from what I can see, and also I heard some rumors about the detectives after having learned that the DPS had a match to Udo on the left breast swab. They were so upset, some of them went home, were crying, said to their wives they had blood on their hands.
The Phoenix detectives?
Phoenix detectives. So I guess in response, what I'm saying back to you is, at the moment, I believe that the Phoenix detectives were doing everything they could possibly do to get the thing solved. I think they were. And you know, really, for them, this would be a career-making case to crack.
But I'm talking about the lab, not the police officer.
Oh. I don't know. You know, it's hard to say. I really don't know the answer to that. I wish I did. Maybe someday I'll come back after the case is over and I'll give you everything that I know. I just don't know right now. You guys have all that. Let's go Powell first. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4.
G, Mark, is there like any business cards or any information you might have around for people that, you know, make sure they have with them if you're long term?
Does anybody here not have my card?
I will say this, there's a few magnetic ones over here. I strongly recommend if you can grab them if you left. But,
yeah, John,
480-755-7110. If you have it,
Hey, I like that.
stick it in your door, stick it in the door jamb of your car, so if the cop makes you get out or whatever, and he's looking to your car,
bottom of the
it's right there.
refrigerator. That's what I like.
I think at some point here, I'm going to have to come out with my article, which is entitled Legalized Methamphetamine, which is really an article about why we should end the drug war. I'm going to have to amend that into version 2 to incorporate the entire baseline case into my argument as one of the many reasons the drug war, or as Harry Brown used to say, the insane war on drugs, just needs to end. The thing needs to be over yesterday. So there was one there, and then something we had another. Oh, we were going to go there first. Let's go there.
Mark, as you said, you know, for all of us who've been in the military, you can delegate authority but not responsibility. Who is ultimately responsible? Mayor Gordon, Governor Napolitano, who?
Hard for me to say. I mean, I would say at a minimum, the person running the crime, I mean, first the chief is accountable, right? And so, but I think that there is a person who's in charge of the DNA section at the crime lab. Now, what is that person going to say in my deposition of them? I don't know. They may say the chief told me not to waste resources and test it, then we're going to be talking to the chief. I don't know what they're going to say. But you know what? Somebody at the city of Phoenix made a decision not to test that swab, and somebody resisted the repeated requests from the detectives to test that swab. And that act, that failure to test that swab, I think we can show was the direct cause of not arresting Marc Boudreau, because I mean, we don't have to speculate about what would have happened, because as soon as DPS tested it, got a match to Marc Boudreau, the guy was on probation, they knew just where he lived. They went right out, picked him up, and brought him in, end of story. Right over here.
Your argument is that it's gross negligence.
At least gross negligence. It may be recklessness, and it may be intentional conduct.
Oh my God.
Are there any other cases where you can see that they're doing this on other cases where they're not testing everything?
The information I have is yes. One of the detectives who I spoke to specifically told me, and by the way, I should mention this too, I got so much information about the overall screwed up activities at the Phoenix Crime Lab that one of the things I put in there was based on the overall just grossly negligent operation of the Phoenix Crime Lab. Things that I can't prove at the moment, but I think to be true. Then when the powers that be come down to accreditate the Phoenix Crime Lab, Phoenix decides to take a bunch of things, box them up, and move them off site so they're not inspected. Cases are submitted for testing, and years later, things are tested. Things are lost. Constant problems in the lab with things being done. Also tension between the Phoenix lab and the DPS lab. There was, I think, some resistance by Phoenix to let DPS be the heroes to solve the case. They wanted to solve it. They wanted to get it done. I think Phoenix has maybe hired some DPS people or vice versa. There's a little bit of tension between those two labs. So I did put as a claim just the overall gross negligent operation of the Phoenix Crime Lab, and it's something I'm interested in getting to the bottom of, because really, I'm not one to make the case for government at all. But I mean, if there's anything government should be doing, and if you start from job one, right, job one, maybe solving a serial rape, murder type case when you got the evidence in your hand. I mean, why are they working on anything other than that? And to me, that is the primary #1 mission. I was on Ernie's show this week, and we were talking about an analogy between this case and FEMA with the hurricane in New Orleans. Why? That's what FEMA exists for. That is their mission. If there's ever a hurricane and it happens, we move on it. That's our job. So when the time came for them to be in charge and to take care of everybody, when the government was on, okay, government, you're on, go do it, they completely blew it. I mean, and right here, right? The baseline case. This is it, crime lab. Wait, is there something else you're doing more important? We got the DNA, we handed it to you, we created this database for you, we got the swab, we did everything perfect for you. Here's the DNA, there's the database, here's the stuff to test it, you're the PhD, we're requesting that you do it, just get it done. And it still doesn't happen. Are you kidding me? So, like Ernie was saying, all those people who make the argument, oh my God, without the government, what would happen if this terrible thing happened, or that terrible? I mean, the problem is not what we do without government, it's what happens when we really need action, and it's the government's job to get it done. And that's the scary part to me. Okay, so back, who'd we go with?
I wanted to know about the lab. Is it a privately owned lab that
Phoenix,
the city
it's the
contracts
city,
with?
well, from what I think it's a City of Phoenix lab, and I think they have just recently gotten a bunch of money to improve the lab. Back here.
Bigger freezer.
To me, this is the difference between a peace officer and law enforcement.
I've given that speech many times.
Exactly.
Two actually police officers. I once spoke to 400 and something police officers in a room. They were the Arizona, what was it? I forget. They were stolen car guys, vehicle unit. There were some from other states. It was 400 of them, and I was the only defense attorney asked to give a speech to them. And my speech was Mark Victor's perspective on the difference between a peace officer and a law enforcement officer. And I went off about how much I love peace officers, and they're so great and wonderful, and they became police officers to catch bad guys and to protect people, and we love them, we love them, we love them, we love them. Then there's the law enforcement officer, and I think I might have started with that's the jackbooted thug that you see sometimes riding a motorcycle with the big boots. Things went down from there. Some of the officers actually got up and left the room, and some of the officers stayed. And I thought what was interesting is at the end of my speech, some of the officers actually came up to me and said, Mr. Victor, we want to say something to you. And I said, what? And they said, you got some big balls to come here and say that. And my response back was, why? I mean, should I be at risk of worrying that I'm going to be beat up by a group of police officers because I said some things that they didn't like? That's my case about law enforcement officers. And you know, when I meet somebody who's a police officer and they become a quasi-friend of mine, and the reason I say that is I don't generally have police officer friends, but I do have one very good, close buddy, former Marine, served together in Saudi Arabia kind of guy. He is grandfathered in because we were friends before I was a defense attorney and before he was a police officer. But I do have some acquaintances, I'll say, who are police officers, and I like to cut right to the chase with them. Is the camera still on? I'll say it anyways, it's no biggie. People know I say bad things sometimes. But there are minors here, so this would be a good time to do that. I walk up to them and I say, I have my test for you to figure out what kind of police officer you are. This is my quick 1-minute Mark Victor test to find out what variety of police officer you are. He says, okay, fire away. And I say, assume you are on just regular kind of patrol duty and you're standing around on Mill Ave one night and some punk ASU kid comes up to you and he stands right up to you, he walks up peacefully and he quietly but nicely says to you, you know, I hate fucking cop pigs like you. What would your reaction be to that? The good cops, the peace officers, they just say, keep moving, whatever, okay, goodbye. And I say, great, you could be a friend of mine. The ones who say, He might have stepped on my foot. I think I'm going to arrest him for aggravated assault on a police officer. Or maybe I could do him for disorderly. Or maybe I could do him for threatening and intimidating. That's the jerk. Okay? That's the big ego, you work for me kind of police officer who could never be friends with me. And that's exactly what I say to them. And then I usually add to them to that. If I catch you doing that, guess where you're going to be going?
Going to jail.
Federal court, my new favorite place. All right, I'm going to tell this story too because it may become a story and it may not become a story. It's too early to tell. This is breaking news, hot off the press. But when I told Ernie about this, his head exploded. Now you're going to think this is going to be good, but it's actually better than you think. So you've got to wait till the end. I'm going to go through it quickly. I have a client who called me up this past week, and this is what he told me happened. He lives out of state with his friends, and he heard about this really fun thing to do called tubing down the Salt River. So he you heard the story? Don't say it.
I won't.
All right. So, tubing down the Salt River. Paul knows this story too. And he comes out with 7 of his friends, and the group of 8 decide to travel up to the Salt River and go tubing. How fun! And they say, you know, we brought a couple of beers along, and we don't have any problems. So we took a cab there, and we planned to take this big sort of van cab thing back. Don't have any issues. Great. So they go and they tube down the river, have a great time. I'm sure they get burned, and they have a terrific time. And they're going to turn in their tubes. Everybody here been to the Salt River? All right. They're going to turn in their tubes, and you know where they're standing, right? You roll them underneath the wood thing. And 2 of the girls realize that, oh my God, I lost something. It's probably not the first time that happened, right? You went down the little rapid part, and something fell off, your keys, your wallet, who knows, your hat. You always lose something. You always lose something. So they get into a little discussion about whose fault it was to lose this thing. I can't believe you were supposed to hold it, I was supposed to. So they're getting this sort of heated, a little bit louder discussion. Well, who patrols up at the Salt River? The sheriff. Sheriff Joe's finest, right? Or actually, maybe Sheriff Joe's not quite the finest, because you might think that maybe not the best of Sheriff Joe's people get assigned up to the Salt River. One of those guys comes walking over upon hearing the little bit of commotion going on between the girls. He's walking over, he's gonna, it's his world up there. He walk over and try to straighten this out. Well, one of the guys says, it's all right, we gotta figure it out. And Sheriff Joe's finest turns around and walks away, problem solved. A few minutes go by, maybe 5 or 10. They've now moved out to the parking lot where they're standing by the van in a circle, getting ready to get into the van. And 2 girls are still kind of talking a little bit about what happened. Well, one of Sheriff Joe's finest comes flying over, smashing into the circle of friends, grabbing one of the girls, smashing her up against the van like this, holding her like this, while she's trying to turn around like this, going, what the heck, yelling at her, stop resisting. And he also says, as the first thing out of his mouth, this is one of those moments again, you stupid fucking bitch.
Oh my God.
Now, my client, who happens to be the boyfriend of that woman who was just called that name, and who's currently being held up there and arrested, is being told not to resist, says in a very calm voice, you didn't have to say that to her. And then he says his second statement, why are you arresting her? Well, Sheriff Joe's finest turns around and upon hearing such disrespect, grabs my guy in the chest and shoves him back and tells him to get away.